Hello and welcome to The Price of Music, brought to you by Music Ally, the show that's fascinated by the fun and games and finances of the music world, as explained each week by me, Steve Lamack, and him, Stuart Dredge. How's your week been?
Do you know, it's good. It's been quiet, but suddenly about 17 different big news stories are about to land, I think. So it's going all right, yeah. How's yours?
Yeah, I've had a very busy week. I was all over the place, actually, in the last week, including, well, it was the first meeting of the board members of the Live Trust, which is the new charity board which will be responsible for distributing money which has been received from the £1 contributions coming in from gigs in stadiums and arenas, which so far, I think, has amassed somewhere in the region of a predicted £800,000, which was also boosted this week. I don't know if you saw this, by the announcement that the Royal Albert Hall in London is going to give £1 a ticket to the Live Trust from every rock or pop gig that the venue stages from October onwards, which is a terrific piece of news, because that's, in theory, that's around £300,000 a year, which is going into the fund to put back into live music at the grassroots level via, well, venues and promoters and artists and small festivals. So that was very positive. And then by coincidence, I was at the Royal Albert Hall on Friday night, attending the first night of the Proms, sat next to Imogen Edwards-Jones, author of Hotel Babylon. But that, as they say, is a story for another day, or possibly actually for the lock-in coming up later on. For now, though, we should crack on, because there's three big stories to get through this week, including one breaking news story, which we've learnt about, which is going to be announced, I think, while we're recording or just after, but we'll try and make sense of that for you in a second. Before all that, though, shall we start with, as is becoming tradition, with Stuart's big number? Can you give us an eye-watering figure? At least, can you make a bigger? Can you try harder than last week's slightly underwhelming figure? This week's big number is.
Yeah, it was 1,000 last week, and you poked fun at me, didn't you? So anyway, here's a number for you: 2.5 trillion.
There you see, you can do it.
That's a big number.
What's the story behind 2.5 trillion in music terms?
So 2.5 trillion is a number of, and this is a long sentence,
Right.
number of global on-demand audio song streams in the first half of this year. So basically, we collectively have played 2.5 trillion songs on audio streaming services, so not YouTube videos, in the first 6 months. And that is up 10.3% year on year. So we're streaming more music collectively.
Right.
And do you want some dodgy maths?
Yeah.
Which I'm always
I'm always up for some dodgy maths. Yeah, okay. All our listeners are sitting there thinking, yeah, let's complicate this with some dodgy maths.
This is what we came for. So there are 8.2 billion people in the world. So that means an average of 304 music streams each, if we were all using stream services. Okay. So that's a lot of streams.
It is. I mean, it's one of those times where it's a big figure. But I'm going to ask, is it a good figure, though? Because I don't know, is it big enough for some people? Because I'm asking this really because on occasion over the past year, you've alluded to the fact that record labels are slightly annoyed that streaming isn't growing in the way that they would like, in a way that would be even more profitable for them. So is this going to reassure them, or is this going to confirm their fears of potential stagnation amongst the streaming services?
Well, I think the key thing is this is consumption. This is listening. It's not money. And I think that's the big problem at the moment. So this comes from a company called Illuminate, who crunch data for the music industry. I should have said that at the start. So what it is, music listening is still growing. But I think we've covered these figures before. The money being made from streaming isn't growing that fast.
Right.
So that's where the concerns come in. The interesting thing, that there was this big report Illuminate did. And one of the things, they had this breakdown of the countries in the world and where the most streams come from.
Mm-hmm.
The US is the biggest. It's like 765 billion streams. But then behind that, next is India and Mexico and Brazil, which is kind of the interesting thing there, is that these countries, which historically were difficult to sell music in, they weren't big music sales markets, but they're huge stream markets in terms of people listening. And the big task now is to get people to subscribe there and figure out how much money they can generate. For the industry. So that's I think for labels, that's the exciting thing, is that this streaming is not just the big, famous, mature music markets. It's these different parts of the world. So that was big. I mean, the other thing, and I was going to I was going to do a little test, a little quiz for you here, like a personality quiz. So this report also breaks down different types of music listener. Like it's a part of this superfan trend that we've talked about.
Yeah.
And basically it says, I don't know, 20% of music listeners just literally hear music sometimes on the radio, like the most casual.
Mm-hmm.
About 14% use streaming services for free, so they're more active. 30% pay for streaming or physical music, so they're active fans. But then you've got 18% of fans who do those things, but they also, and the phrase is, engage with artists on at least 3 of 13 different activation channels. Because that's what fans think of themselves as, activating on activation channels. And 18% of super fans, because they engage with artists on at least 5 of these channels. So I know what you're thinking. What are these 13 things that you have to do at least 5 of to be a super fan? So I thought I'd do a little test on you to see how many you. I think you might answer more than 10 here, honestly.
All right.
Okay. So first one, going to gigs.
Yep.
Obviously. Talking about artists with your friends and family.
Yep.
With or at, I don't know which one. Watching live streams online.
No, not really.
No.
Yeah, not really.
No.
But I'm never in. I'm always at a gig.
True. Buying physical music.
Yep.
Buying downloads. I'm not sure anyone does yes to that now.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I have bought a couple of downloads in the last month, so I can say, I can cheerfully say yes to that.
Yeah, I suppose Bandcamp as well, actually. Buying merch.
Yep. As the cupboard upstairs full of t-shirts verifies.
Okay, posting about artists on social media.
Yes, occasionally.
Interacting with artist music on chat forums and networks. Things like Discord and Reddit, but basically online, messaging communities.
Yeah, no. You don't be friends with anyone in a band. I mean, that's something I learned very early on, and it's because it's harder particularly when you're a journalist, because at some point I found that they've made a terrible record, and if you're their friends, I mean, as a journalist, you've got to tell them it's a terrible record, and then you find you're not their friend anymore. So, no, I'm not interacting with a lot of artists, particularly online.
Okay, signing up for artist newsletters. Again, you probably don't need to, do you?
But I have though.
Yeah,
yeah. There's one or two. Yeah, one or two favourites. Yeah.
Okay, subscribing to fan clubs.
No, not since I was 14 or 15. I think.
Okay, well, so you have done it, I suppose. But, tipping artists in person or online.
In person, tipping them in person.
Covent Garden, yeah.
I did bump into one quite famous rock musician backstage at that Fontaine's DC gig. If I'd have just put a fiver in his hand, said, "Go on, Dave, treat yourself."
There you go.
No.
Buying virtual merch, I suspect, maybe a no.
That's a no, yeah.
And then directly funding artists through crowdfunding or sending them cash. So when they have these payment links, like you can send me cash via PayPal. Cash.
Yeah. Strangely, not artists. Oh, actually, I did sign up to the Eva Lazarus Help Me Make an EP. Yes, I have. Yeah.
But, so I think you're about.
Not often.
I think you're about 9 of those, and the ones you're not are more because you're not in that technology than. So, and it's just interesting. It was for me thinking about this is the definition of a super fan. Only 5 of those, but I think a lot of people were listening probably on 7, 8, 9. So,
how did you score? Did you score yourself?
I think I got about the same 9, 8, 9.
Yeah.
I'm not in a fan club at the moment. Oh no, I'm in a. Do you know? I'm in a fan club of one band who we won't mention. Maybe 9. So about the same. But it's nice because
look. Tell me later in the lock-in what the band is. We promise to do that. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So but this is the definition of what super fan. I think it's good because some of these things are about buying stuff, but actually a lot of it is about talking to people, engaging with things, seeing bands live. I think it's a good set of criteria of like what makes a music fan.
Okay. Our top 3 stories of the week. Story number 1. Now, if Drake's legal battle with Universal Music Group ever gets to court, apparently it could come face to face with Kendrick Lamar in the witness box. That's going to be pay-per-view, I imagine. Tell us more about that. Well, remind us of the characters involved and the plot so far.
Yeah, this is one of the ongoing dramas. So to recap, like Drake is suing Universal Music Group, who are his label partner as well, because of Kendrick Lamar's diss track, Not Like Us, which was released by another bit of the UMG empire. He's not suing Kendrick Lamar, who wrote the track. He's suing Universal Music for releasing and promoting it. And he's suing for defamation because of the line certified paedophile, which he says could have led people to think that he, Drake, was a certified paedophile. That's the gist of this case.
Right.
And the latest news this month is that both sides have kind of put their legal filing in saying these are the witnesses we might call. So not definite witnesses, but these are the list of people we might call to give evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And Drake listed 63, which is going to make this one of those 700-part Netflix dramas. Various execs at Universal Music, but also he mentioned Amazon Music, Apple, Spotify, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. So he might call people from those companies to talk about how this song was promoted and what their role in it was.
Right.
But Universal enlisted 7 witnesses, but Kendrick Lamar is one of them. So yeah, you could have them come face to face, because they haven't, as far as I'm aware, they haven't been face to face. I'm not even sure they've been at an awards ceremony together since this all happened. Like they haven't had a public confrontation other than through music. So this might be the first time. Although Drake might not be there the day Kendrick is.
Yeah. Who's going to blink first? Do you think? Will someone try and settle, or to save face? Do they have to go through with this court case now?
I don't know. I don't think it does either of them any good, because if this case happens, one, there could be dirty laundry being out about how things were done, but also even just stuff that is secret, like how Universal promotes songs. It doesn't want other labels to get the full skinny on how it promotes a big track and what kind of deals it does, because that's its kind of secret sauce, like any label. I mean, it's really, I was looking at the previous case that kind of almost compares quite well to this. Do you remember when Elon Musk was trying to send a submarine down to rescue some people who were trapped underwater, and he got into this public argument with a British diver on Twitter, and he called him pedo guy, I think, and this went to trial for defamation, exactly the same thing. The guy was like, "You defame me by calling that," and Elon Musk was actually cleared of that. And one of the arguments his lawyers made was like, when you have an argument, you insult people, you don't mean it, no one thinks you mean it. And he was cleared in the end for various reasons, including that. So in a way, that doesn't really augur well for Drake, because it sort of suggests that if people understand that you're not saying this person is really what I'm saying they are, it's just for the purpose of an argument. So in that sense, I think there's a good emphasis on Drake to settle too. I don't think, if he went to court and he lost, that would be embarrassing and costly. But yeah, and I think we've talked about the issues here. Like this is a big, this is kind of, it's quite fun. Everyone is getting their popcorn in the hope it might go to court, but it's a big issue of free speech, I guess. Like, can you throw any insult you like in a rap battle and people understand you don't mean it? And if you can't, is that like a restriction on free speech and artistic expression? These are the things that people are kind of talking about could be. But again, I think it makes most sense for this to be settled and neither side to have to go through this in court, because, yeah, no one's got a lot to win, I think, from a verdict either way.
Story number 2 this week. We are recording this episode on Tuesday. Is it still morning? Yeah, it's just coming up towards midday on Tuesday. And at any second or within the next hour, we think there'll be an announcement in the House of Commons about this. It's from the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. It's a further push to try and make streaming remuneration fairer for artists. I think that's the gist of it. From what you've heard so far from your contacts, it's a big announcement and it's about streaming. Fill us in a little bit more with what you know.
Yeah, and to stress, this is very much me and my contacts, and nothing is being announced officially until the government announces it.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a deadline that's moving. But yeah, so this goes back a few years when we had a big streaming inquiry in the UK from the Parliament, where I think the upshot of it was labels got quite a big kicking. It wasn't just streaming services getting criticised, it was labels and talk about bad contracts with artists and how money didn't flow through. And one upshot was this working group that was created under the government's watch. So where all the music industry bodies representing the labels, the publishers, the collecting societies, but also the creators of music, have basically been sat in a room for 2 years arguing about how to improve the lot of musicians. And it has been real arguments of some people are pushing for big reforms, big changes in the way money is, and other people pushing back and saying, no, we don't want to change too much. It could be harmful. So as I understand it, this announcement is going to be a set of principles that have been agreed by everyone in that room to help creators. So it's a bit about legacy artists. So the kind of artists who were signed to deals back in the CD day, who haven't been doing well from streaming, partly because of those deals. Maybe they haven't recouped the advances they were paid. Maybe they're on a terrible rate for digital. So there's some stuff on that, I think, of labels. I don't think they're going to change the contracts, but they're promising to reply if the manager or artist requests it and says, "Look, I want to renegotiate my contract. It's unfair." There's some promises there. They're going to help those legacy artists to increase their number of streams, and that's more about helping them do marketing. So if you are a band who was signed in the 90s, the label might say, "Okay, we're going to help you market your catalog better and double your streams. Do well."
Yeah.
There's some songwriter stuff. So if you're a songwriter going in to do songwriting for an artist, you'll get paid per DMs, which is 75 quid a day for your time, rather than being expected to work for free. That's been something that's been campaigned for a while. And I think there's a rise in rates for session musicians as well. People who are going in and working on recordings, and so it's kind of a package of measures that I'm trying to think how to put it. It's all welcome and it's all good stuff. The thing I'm interested in is seeing the reaction to it, because it's not the big changes that some other campaigners have been pushing for. So pushing for stuff like, we've talked about equitable remuneration, where money from streaming is split more equally between labels and artists. That doesn't appear to be on the table here. So it's more.
Sorry to jump in, but that crucially was one of the big bones of a contention, at least particularly from the artist side. So it still feels that labels and artists are still at loggerheads over something which is quite crucial, with the streaming services in the middle.
I think that's it. And I mean, you could describe this as kind of tinkering around the edges of stuff, but welcome things, but they're just steps. But the other thing I've picked up, and this comes from everyone actually, the one thing they can all agree on is that they all seem to have respect for the minister, who's Chris Bryant, who you've talked about before. He's the culture minister. It seems like he came in when the government was appointed. He came in and kind of did a bit of light banging heads together and has pushed for there to be something they can agree on and something to put out and some changes. So I think part of the reaction will be, well, these aren't the big changes that have been campaigned for. But I think there is a recognition that the government is at least trying to make stuff happen and is keeping a watching brief. Like, I expect what the gist will be is like, we're going to do this stuff, see how it goes, and maybe in a year we'll come back and say, has this changed things, and look at anything further then. So it's kind of it's not a thing that fixes streaming suddenly, but it does sound like it's going to be some good, welcome, small steps that maybe do pave the way for this more in future.
I mean, it feels like it's one way of saying, look, we are getting somewhere, because there were a lot of frustrations waiting around for people to say anything about streaming. As you say, it's years now since that streaming inquiry. It's 100 years since that streaming inquiry.
It was during COVID, wasn't it?
Yeah, nothing much has really changed for the beleaguered artists. So they need to get to a point where they have some positive news before they can then push on to what's the next important points. But as I say, while you have record labels down one end of the table and artists at the other, believing that they're slightly unfairly treated by this current payment system, then it's a hard one, isn't it? Chris Bryant is very good at trying to find a middle ground, but I mean, it will be a Herculean task to. I suppose the next thing is who's just going to have to start chipping away, saying, "Is there any give on your side?" and bring about some compromise.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's been very funny actually as journalists seeing this, because normally when this sort of thing happens, when something is announced, people like to tell journalists the day before under embargo.
Yeah.
Get on the phone to you, tell you what it means, give you their side of the story. But with this, and this is, I think, to do with like the way the Parliament works, and the Speaker of the House gets very cross if the government announces things not in Parliament first. That's kind of a long-standing tradition. And he puffs it up to his full kind of annoyed randomness and goes, "How dare you do this?" So there's been no one's been allowed to kind of do that sort of pre-announcing stuff. So it really is going to be government first, then everyone will put out their press releases, and then we'll see if this kind of entente cordiale is holding, or if someone comes out and goes, "I think this is a load of old bollocks and I'm going to complain." So that'll be what happens tomorrow.
Okay,
if it happens.
All right. I'll tell you what, next week, we'll come back to this next week, because I think the reactions, as you say, will be really interesting, because everyone involved in streaming, especially representatives of artists or artists themselves, will be responding to this annoyingly over the next 24 hours after we've posted this. But we'll come back to it maybe next week, unless they have sorted out all the music industry's troubles, and in which case we will do an emergency. We've never done an emergency podcast,
No,
so we could do
we
an
should.
emergency podcast. I doubt it's going to come to that, but we'll come back to that story. Big story number 3. Oh, now, yeah, tell us about this, because I mean, there's not a lot of money floating, as we know. Talking even last week about how bands make money, it's hard for groups to make a living, but even offered this quite a large chunk of money. The Welsh indie wizards Los Campesinos have revealed now why they turned down a $60,000 sync deal for use of their music for an Airbnb advert.
Yeah, I love Welsh indie wizards as a descriptor as well.
Yeah.
Obligatory. Yeah, this came out of the blue. So the band, there hadn't been a rumor about this or a leak, and the band themselves announced it on X, formerly Twitter, and said, "Yeah, in April we declined an offer of 60 grand to license songwriters to Airbnb." And the reason they gave was Airbnb has been used to rent out properties in Israeli settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories, which is about as hot potatoes come to discuss politically right now. But this is like an old story. It's like Airbnb banned listings from these settlements a few years ago, then reversed the ban. And it's been in the news again recently about how should they be allowing people in these settlements to rent out their rooms and make money. And the band said, we don't want our music to be associated with this. We don't want to fund this. And so we'd turn it down. And yeah, you're right. I think it comes, I mean, it's one of the few times when a band has talked about not just the issues and principles around it, but they've talked about actually how much they were offered for this kind of usage. And sync can be a very mysterious area, I think, for a lot of music fans. So, but here was a hard number. This is how much this band got offered to do this kind of ad for this brand. So
yeah, I mean, it's actually quite an opportunity to dig into syncs a little bit. I mean, and also how attitudes have changed, because I mean, going back in time, I mean, all manner of alternative artists turned down having their music used in adverts in the late 80s and early 90s. I mean, I'm pretty sure both Pop Will Eat Itself and Carter the Unstoppable Sex Machine were amongst those who turned down the use of their music in ads. I think one of them was for something like KP nuts, which I mean is quite an innocuous product, but it was different times then. One, you could still make some money out of actually selling records, but also I think artists were far more worried possibly about claims that they'd sold out artistically sold out. But yeah, I mean, the process is. Just as an aside, but leaping off from the story, if you've ever wondered how music gets on an ad, as far as as I understand it, and I'm not the biggest expert, but the client, that's whatever product it is. Let's say it's a chocolate bar manufacturer. The chocolate bar manufacturer goes to an ad agency, then the ad agency comes up with an idea for the advert, and then the ad agency will choose a soundtrack to the ad. I mean, years ago was approached once by an ad agency saying, have you got any ideas for music we could use in this ad? So they canvass a few opinions. They're probably these days hounded, I imagine, by labels and publishers and sync companies saying, we've got this music. Do you think you can use it anywhere? But anyway, and then eventually, obviously, the artists will get an approach, and the ad agency they'll make an offer for what they think that piece of music is worth for them to use in the ad. And usually they'll set a time limit on it. So they'll say, we're going to do a 6-week campaign for which we'll offer you X £1,000. And then if they decide to extend the campaign, if it's a successful campaign, they'll come back to you and offer you some more money. The money obviously will depend on how big the artist is or how desperate the company are to use your music. So money, this will vary tremendously. And so no disrespect to Los Campesinos, but I imagine Noel Gallagher was probably offered a little bit more for use of a cover version of Half a World Away in that John Lewis ad at Christmas the other year. I sense he sat back contemplating how he was going to enjoy his Christmas from that particular royalty check. Although actually the best one, do you know the best one? Do you remember Billy Childish's version of the Dad's Army theme, which was used, I think it was Asda. Yeah. It was used in a commercial for Asda. And whatever Billy was paid by Asda, all pretty much pure profit, because the original track was recorded on one of those old, those 4-track home recording studio things that you could get, which, I mean, it was recorded, the track was recorded onto a cassette, because I remember the man who put the song out as a single from the label saying, do you know what the biggest recording cost was for that track? Billy Childish's version of Who Do You Think You're Kidding, Mr. Hitler? The biggest outlay for that song was the C60 cassette it was recorded on.
Wow, that's good business.
So he did, I think he probably did all right out of that. But yeah, and then obviously, apart from what the agency offers you financially, as I say, it will vary dramatically. But then you have to dig into what the artist actually gets paid, which and that's subject to all kind of variables again, because it depends on the terms of your record or publishing contract. I got in touch with someone actually just to try and test out what I knew about this. Someone who knows loads more than I do, and he explained it this way. This is how the payment is made. So say out of the $60,000, it could be split up like this. He says, usually a sync deal will be 50% for the master and 50% for the writer. So that's 50% for the recorded music, 50% is publishing. Whether it goes on, whether or not those monies make it to the artist or writer is based on the terms of their deals. Sync licenses on the label side are usually 50-50, he was saying. So 50% going to the label, 50% to the artist. That's how they split the money. But the 50% to the artist, if there's a clause in their contract where income counts against recoupment, then that money's just going to go off, and basically, if you're, I don't know, 25, 30 grand down the hole to your record label, then the money that comes in from that advert, if you have a certain deal, it will basically say, right, we're taking that to recoup the money that we loaned you when you signed your deal. I
So
mean,
it could clear your debt, I guess, couldn't it? If it was big enough, then. So it could be a good thing in that sense. It could clear your debt, and then you start earning from all the other things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, although psychologically, if somebody came up and said, "I'm going to give you 30 grand," you go, "Yes, brilliant," and then somebody else came along and said, "I'm going to take that 30 grand." You are 30 grand better off, but it sort of doesn't feel like it. It's a bit better with publishing because it's more likely that money goes to writers. And my contact said, money goes to writer. I mean, the publisher will take their percentage, which is 20% or lower. But again, if the terms of your deal say we're going to have that back because we loaned you some money, then off it will go again. So I think there's two morals to this tale, isn't there? One, this is another example of never, but when you see a figure, any figure, any financial figure, any money being given to a band for anything, not all that money is going to go to that artist. When we talk about how much you've made from streaming, not all that money is going to the artist. When you hear somebody's been offered this for the use of their music in a film, not all the money is going to the artist. The other moral of this tale is do check the small print when you're signing your record or publishing contract.
Well, but it's interesting because I think we only ever hear about the amounts in sync when someone is complaining. Generally, like, artists don't tend to boast about how much money they made.
No.
But I think the other one I remember other than this was, do you remember Heaven 17's Martin Ware? He got an offer from Grand Theft Auto developers to attempt it, and I think it was like $7,500, and he was like, "This is ridiculous! Look how much money Grand Theft Auto makes," and that sparked a big debate because people were saying, "Well, look how many tracks they license."
Yeah,
that's a lot of money. But that was the last time I remember sync being in the spotlight in this sense, where an artist saying, "I got offered this and I'm not happy," although in that case it was the amount rather than the principles around it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Any other business? What were you saying? What was that story about Five Finger Death Punch? Because you wouldn't tell me what it was.
No. Okay. What's the connection between Taylor Swift and Five Finger Death Punch?
Oh, I'm no good at these questions. Do they both demand, I don't know, bejeweled hair dryers on their rider? Hang on. Are they both banned somewhere? Are they both banned in China? That's not it, is it?
Possibly.
I don't know. I concede. What's the connection between Taylor Swift and Five Finger Death Punch?
Okay, I can't disprove either of those guesses, so they may be true. But yeah, well, it's re-recording your hits. So Taylor Swift famously re-recorded a bunch of her albums when her catalogue was sold without her permission. And now Five Finger Death Punch, who are a very successful rock band. I think they're like 7 albums in, or they had 7 albums as part of this.
Right.
They used to be signed to a label called Prospect Park, which sold the rights that it owned in the albums to a company called Spirit Music Group. So one of those catalog deals. And the band weren't happy. And what they say, and so far we've only heard one side, they say they didn't get the chance to buy those recordings themselves, and they might have bought them back and owned them. And they've also been in litigation with this label for a while, so there's kind of no love lost on both sides. But what they've done is they've re-recorded a bunch of their hits for this new compilation called Best of Volume 1, which is one of those things that kind of suggests that there'll be a Volume 2 coming along if it works.
Yeah.
And they said Taylor Swift was direct inspiration. They saw what she did and thought, well, we could do that. This might be a solution. And the thing it made me think is, like, Taylor Swift started doing her re-recordings a few years ago now. And some people said, oh, this might become a trend. Like, loads of other artists might look at what she's doing and say, yeah, we could do that. We could have the rights of things. And it didn't really happen. Like, there haven't really been that many examples, which maybe is a testament to the fact that when that dispute has emerged, people have preferred to negotiate and sign settlement with a label rather than go nuclear. But this is probably one of the first, the highest prominent examples of this happening that's not Taylor Swift. And like Taylor, it means that these new recordings will be sitting on streaming services alongside the originals, which is kind of, it's a dilemma for fans. Like, which ones do you stream? Do you kind of switch to the new ones in support of the band, assuming they're as good? But also streaming services, if you're a playlister at Spotify or Apple Music and you're putting a Five Finger Death Punch song on a playlist, do you choose the re-recording or the original? Like, it's a little political moment for you. Yeah. And then that's before we get to the algorithms. Like, when Spotify's algorithm goes, oh, I think you'd like Five Finger Death Punch. There's a lot of that happening of sort of bands who've been going for a long time having catalog stuff resurfaced in recommendations. Which one will it choose? And that is something I doubt even Spotify will be able to tell you that, because it will be depending on how many people are streaming the new stuff, who likes what, likes things similar to them.
Yeah.
But it does mean this is what happens in these situations. Like, you can't delete the old versions that you're protesting about, so you have to compete with them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I've got one little bit of any other business, which I think is worth a mention, because we do always like to bring musicians' attentions to available grants and funds that might be open to them. Although in this case, this is one for you if you happen to put on gigs. Any promoters out there, particularly running shows at grassroots level. This is another thing I ended up at last week. I went to the PRS Foundation Summer Drinks event last week, which was held to mark the first year and a bit of their early career promoter fund, which launched last May, and it's aimed at giving new promoters a bit of help, take some of the worry off their shoulders. I think it's sort of about getting their business off the ground. More likely, it's helping emerging promoters to get to the next level. So they give them some money to be a bit more ambitious, or to give them the confidence to promote shows with a sort of financial safety nets. But it's doing all right, apparently. Since the fund began, it's already dispensed more than 170 grants in just over a year to early stage promoters. Grants of, you can get up to £3,500, apparently. And they reckon that the money that they've put into the live system so far has helped spawn an additional 500 gigs since they got going with this, which is very heartening. Because, I mean, anything at the moment to encourage new promoters would be good, because, I mean, it can be a very precarious business to be in financially. But there was a lot of positivity in the room, though, I have to say. There was a lot of very enthusiastic emerging promoters there. So if you happen to be one of them, or you'd like some more information, just go to, it's on the PRS Foundation website. You just if you go to the PRS Foundation website, click on funding, and then click on funding for music professionals, you'll find the details there. And finally, for this week, interesting things you can buy on eBay.
Yeah, I read it. So, some people go to the pub, have a few pints, go home, and then buy something unsuitable on eBay.
Yeah.
Someone may have done this. I don't know. So yeah, someone has paid $245,000 for the rights to the Fire Festival on eBay.
Which, I mean, that's a tiny figure, isn't it? Mind you, I mean, it's fraught with danger, but That what was the recommended? But you don't have a recommended bid, really, do you?
Well,
But
the guy,
that
the guy
seems a
selling,
small. That's a small figure. That's not a big figure in
not a
this
big
case,
figure.
is it?
That's why it's at this end of the show, you see. But yeah, so I mean, just to recap, the most disastrous festival in recent memory, I suspect. Certainly the most disappointing cheese sandwiches at the festival. So bad, so problematic. Its founder went to prison as a result of it. So, but then he got out and decided, you know what the world needs? Fire Festival 2. And he was trying to put that on this year. And then that didn't quite happen. It was postponed. And so he said, I'm going to sell the rights. Make me offers for the rights, the branding rights. And then it went on eBay, which made me suggest that no one did make an offer.
Mm.
And it sold for $245,000. But this guy, Billy McFarlane's his name, he was live streaming the closing stage of the auction online. And apparently his verdict on the price was, damn, this sucks. It's so low. So I don't think he was very happy, which I think anyone who's done it on eBay knows that feeling, don't you? When you're there waiting for the last 5 minutes and then it doesn't explode in bids. So, we've all been there, but not quite to this extent.
All right, that's where we'll leave it for this week. Unless you are one of our kindly Patreon subscribers, if you are, stay listening. We'll have another lock-in for you nice people, an extra section of the show. If you'd like to join us for that or support what we're doing, you can sign up to become a fan or super fan of the programme at patreon.com/thepriceofmusic. Otherwise, it'd still be lovely to hear from any and all of you, any correspondence, including questions about the industry you'd like us to try and answer. Drop us a line, thepriceofmusicpodcast@gmail.com. We will definitely be covering some of your questions on the next edition of The Price of Music. So it's thepriceofmusicpodcast@gmail.com if there's anything you'd like us to help out with. Thank you very much for listening and take care. Bye for now.